The Republicans want less Mark Elias litigation, engage in less voter suppression. I'll make them a deal. If they stop suppressing the vote, I will stop suing them for suppressing the vote. We are one, maybe two election cycles away from a real constitutional crisis, because you now have one of the two major parties in this country that is no longer committed to free and fair elections.
Is it Larry Curly or Moe that he looks like? I couldn't remember that. Well, meet sleazy election fixer for hire, Mark Elias. Now, you'll often see him whining about GOP voter integrity laws and how they're killing democracy. But his latest pet cause is gerrymandering.
People don't realize that this will set the course of American politics in state legislatures and in the U.S. House for the next decade. We're going to see these states draw as districts and Republicans engage in gerrymandering in a way that's really problematic. And that is happening now.
Well, that's interesting because Elias is getting rich spearheading the Democrats' gerrymandering efforts. According to the Washington Free Beacon, Democratic and progressive groups paid Elias's firm more than $1 million in the most recent quarter to aid in their gerrymandering efforts. And it turns out that Democrats are just fine with voter suppression as long as they're Republican voters. Now, add up all Elias's gaslighting and the millions he's made off undermining our elections, and he appears to be a one-man Lincoln Project. In fact, the Lincoln Project gave him $45,000. They kind of deserve each other. Joining me now is Sean Davis, co-founder of The Federalist. Now, Sean, Republicans gerrymander too. For people who don't really get what that is, it's kind of redrawing congressional districts, and there's some limitations on how you can do it. But by the looks of it, the Democrats actually kind of were more clever than the Republicans in their recent gerrymandering efforts, correct?
They were. It helps that they end up doing their, I'd say, most dastardly redistricting in states where the courts are fairly on their sides. They don't seem to have many federal restrictions on it. But yeah, I would say they are playing the dirty trick redistricting game pretty good right now.
I want to show what Jerry Nadler's district looks like, and Elias helped with this. It's kind of a crazy looking amoeba. It doesn't look like I'm like, how is that a district? It looks like, I don't know what that looks, some kind of bug or, oh, it kind of looks like Woody Woodpecker or the Roadrunner or something when you turn your head to the side. But this is the proposed district, and it looks like that's actually going to be accepted. So is it that Mark Elias, makes all these charges, but he's actually good at his grifting gig? Or is it that he makes false charges toward the Republicans, and that's all kind of being exposed now?
Well, he loves to put on this pose as some sort of Democrat super lawyer. He never loses. If you look at his record, he's not a particularly great lawyer. In fact, I've got right here the Fifth Federal Circuit had to sanction him for violating what they called his duty of candor to the court, which is basically fancy lawyer talk for saying he lied to the court and tried to pull a fast one on him. And I think he's less a super lawyer and more of just a very well-compensated Democrat DNC dirty trickster. After all, this is the guy who funded the dirty, corrupt collusion dossier that led to the Russian collusion hoax.
Yeah, so that kind of kicked off 4 years of tormenting President Trump. And that wasn't important or anything. That just completely, threw roadblocks in front of Trump all the time, the entire way. Now you have President Xi getting closer to Vladimir Putin because, we couldn't triangulate that relationship because of the Russia collusion investigation. That had a huge effect on American foreign policy, helped by that one guy.
That's exactly right. You really can't discount the negative impact he's had. For all his talk about wanting to safeguard democracy, this guy was one of the biggest election deniers in the country for the last 5 years. And the crux of the matter is, he's like so many people on the left. They don't actually have any principles. They just want to win. They only care if they win. They only care if they get in office. And that's the only principle that matters. And unfortunately for them, that just doesn't ring the marketing bells so much as pretending you're a democracy freedom fighter like they claim.
Now, I want to play a moment from Mark Elias about future elections. Watch.
The fact is, Republicans didn't find much fraud, really any fraud, because there wasn't much of any fraud. So what they're trying to do now is to make the voting rules harder for people to vote, particularly harder for young voters and minority voters to vote, and essentially manufacturing irregularities where they don't exist, so that they can then use those made-up irregularities in 2022 or 2024 to argue that elections shouldn't be certified and therefore subverted.
He's a total bloviator, okay? I diagnose him as just a complete bloviator he gets a lot of people to write him big fat checks, but he doesn't want stuff like signature verification or voter ID. Sean, I just ate up all your time.
Right, he just wants to make it easy
you guys
to
have
cheat.
exposed it at the Federalist. Thank you.